Yes, we're back. For those of you that have been missing us, hey, it's Andy Kahan, Director of Victim Services and Victim Advocacy, Crime Stoppers of Houston. We're so glad to be back here, particularly in the fall of Houston where we have some nice, cool temperatures. Yeah, maybe in a few months or so, but we're back. We're glad you're with us. We're going to be talking about a very important subject here today that's near and dear to my heart. We have a big event at Crime Stoppers coming up called National Day of Remembrance, which is to commemorate homicide victims and those surviving family members of homicide. And we bring everybody together to let them know that we're a community who cares. We'll have law enforcement dignitaries will be here, criminal justice professionals, the district attorney's office, elected officials, all kind of to join together to talk about what we can do to make lives better for homicide survivors. So we're real happy to have a special guest, a person whom, you know, and I don't mean any offense, I wish I never would have met, yet at the same time, I'm so honored and glad that I have met Dave Schwartz and his wife Debbie, who's not with us here as well. And I've known Dave sadly for, oh God, what, 25 years?
25 years.
25 years.
25 years. That
we've gone back and forth, and I've got to know him, and I really think from knowing Dave and his case and what happened, and he'll tell you what happened in his involvement with parents of murdered children and how we got to where we are today. But his story should hopefully resonate with other families that might be watching this, because it's a story of perseverance, dedication, and determination into the worst possible thing that can happen to a family. Yet he and his family just kept gritty resolved in trying to get this thing taken care of. So I guess I'm just going to ask you to take me back to 1994 and what happened, if you don't mind. Just share your story with everybody, because I find it so inspirational.
Thank you, Andy. April the 11th of 1994, my 20-year-old son, Douglas, was murdered, along with another 20-year-old child, Eric Heidbreder. We got the knock on the door probably about 7 o'clock. I wasn't home. I was actually at a meeting, and it was HPD homicide telling my wife what had happened. And I rushed home as soon as I found out. But he was shot 3 times in the back of the head, and police did as good a job as they could trying to find the perpetrator. And unfortunately, it took them 20 years to find it. And I think what you had mentioned earlier, Andy, the word perseverance, it really was. I stayed on the Houston Police Department every week, and knowing that they can't tell me everything, but they hardly would tell me anything. And, you know, we got some leads that he may be, you know,
we kind of knew who the suspect was.
Right.
We were able to identify it, because I remember, and I had just actually started in my position as a victim advocate 2 years earlier, and I remember we went door to door with flyers.
We did.
We did flyer handouts. I remember, I still have footage of us. Right. Now, you still look the same.
Oh, thank you.
No. I mean, I remember we did everything, offering rewards. We went through Crime Stoppers back then, and time kept going and going and going. And I think we pretty much knew within a certain time period that the person whom they identified as the suspect, Sharon Francis, had presumably fled the country.
Right. Supposedly he went to the Dominican Republic with his girlfriend, and, you know, a year later his girlfriend's back in Houston, but they still didn't have Sharon Francis. And, you know, following leads that he had relatives in Louisiana, and you know, his mother may have moved to Beaumont. And I even went so far as to go to Beaumont looking at public records trying to find a phone number for her or an address, and as it turned out, she really hadn't moved. It was false information. But just perseverance. It was hard going to parents of murdered children every month, and everybody tells their story. And, you know, some of the people said, well, you know, my perpetrator is now, you know, in Huntsville serving 20 years, and some of them got the death penalty, and here I was just trying to get the perpetrator caught.
You know, a lot of families whose cases have been through the system.
Right.
I remember some of the cases, of course, were on death row. Some of them as we proceeded later on down the journey, you know, I remember some of them actually went to executions, and I remember you were like, oh, you know, just give me that chance, you know,
Yeah.
just to get some sort of resolution
Right.
in this.
And it is resolution. It's not closure. You know, a lot of people
I
said,
do not like that word
No,
closure.
a
The
lot of-
media uses that
right. A
word.
lot of people use the word closure. To me, you know, closure is, you know, bring my son back. That would be closure. But finally, after 20 years, the perpetrator was caught in Venezuela. And
How did that happen? I remember when you called me,
I did call
and
you.
I was floored because Venezuela just really doesn't send people back. Because
They
I
don't.
know, because I have another family that I've worked with
Right.
whose suspect is in Venezuela, and we can't get them to send
Right.
them back.
No, Venezuela does not like the United States. And the perpetrator, Sharon Francis, actually tried to do something illegal, send something back to the United States, and that's how he was caught. And he was in the Venezuelan prison for a year. And we were trying to get him extradited back to the United States. And because of the animosity that Venezuela had for the United States, we weren't sure if they would even do it. And when I got the call that they were going to do it, finally in 2015, May of 2015, they extradited him.
When I go back and look at the case and look what happened to your son and Eric as well, and I remember telling a reporter, actually it was Kevin Quinn, who's also now with Crime Stoppers, and I said Francis was on the run. He was a fugitive from justice as long as Douglas and Eric lived
Exactly.
on this earth.
Both kids were 20 years old, and he was on the run for 20 years.
So we finally got him back. I remember we went to trial finally, and that was...
We did. It was in Fort Bend County. Trial took 9 days. He was found guilty of murder in my son's case and Eric Heidbreder's. He was sentenced to 75 years in prison, fined $5,000 for each of the murders, and the sentences run concurrently. You know, you might think, well, he's going to spend the next 75 years in prison. That's, as you and I well know, that's not the way the justice system is. He will be eligible for parole in 30 years. But because he spent a year in Venezuela prison and 2.5 years in Fort Bend County before the trial, he gets credit for those 3.5 years. So that's taken off the 30 years.
Basically 26 years.
26 and a half
Right,
years he'll be
eligible,
eligible for parole. And, you know, it is eligible, but we still have to go before the parole board if he makes it that far, and we get the chance to, you know, state why he shouldn't
You know,
get parole.
23 years later, after your son and Eric was murdered, he finally got convicted.
Correct.
And I remember, you know, seeing you all the time at Parents of Murdered Children meeting, just saying, you know, it's going to...
Every month.
I mean, to me, that's the inspiring example. And so, as you well know, going to the meetings, we have a lot of families with unsolved cases.
We do.
Suspects haven't been solved. So when they hear your story, to me, I think that gives them hope that if it happened to you, it can happen to their families.
Well, exactly. And because I thought I was talking to the police and getting as much information as I could, and I thought I knew a lot about the case. During the trial, I was blown away as to how much information HPD got. You hear so many negative things, even at the Parents of Murdered Children meeting.
Yep.
Some of the people like myself who have lost somebody, well, the police won't return my calls. The police won't tell me anything. You know, they can't tell us everything. But I thought I knew 50%, 40%. I didn't know 5% of what was presented at the trial. And because of all that information, I think that's one reason he got convicted.
And I think that's important, particularly for surviving family members of homicide, to understand and recognize that law enforcement can't share everything with you. And there's reasons, valid reasons,
Right.
for doing that. And I know it's hard, and I'm sure it was hard for you and your family.
Extremely.
And then when you find out why, then it kind of like snaps as to why they were not telling you everything.
Well, to take a step further, during the trial, the judge is the king. He can do anything he wants. And some of the things that he allowed the defendant's attorney to do, I said, why is he doing that? And basically, it's in case there's an appeal down the line, he wants to make sure that everybody got a fair shot. And I'm so thankful that he did that, that the police didn't tell me everything they know, because I might have done something that I would have regretted. So, but we're so blessed and thankful that the trial ended with a successful conviction, and the killer of my son is hopefully in Huntsville for at least the next.
I know you had a lot of support at the trial, because I know I was there in and out. I was there most of the time, and I know members of Parents of Murdered Children were also there.
They were.
Making sure. And I think that's important of why this organization exists, and as a support measure for homicide victims. Because thankfully, and I truly mean this, that I don't walk in your shoes. I hope the heck I never do.
I
would never want to walk in your shoes. But it's important for families like yours and so many others to talk to others who are walking in your shoes, because only they can understand what you're truly going through.
And one of my, not roles, but one of the things that I try to accomplish at the monthly meetings of Parents of Murdered Children is to tell them my story. Hey, never give up. Stay in contact with the police. If your homicide detectives won't contact you back, go to the head of homicide, and they'll set up a meeting with them. And that happened 2 or 3 times. But the main thing is just don't ever give up, because there's somebody out there that may not turn him in today, but if something happens a year from now, if it's an old girlfriend or something,
and this is why we try to keep bringing these cases back to light.
Right.
Because you never know at that specific time where you might affect that right person at that right moment.
Correct.
Who might then call in a tip. And your family, of course, is a living proof of that.
Right. And that's where Crime Stoppers comes in again with the tip line. And but it's just a coordination of a number of, from the police, the Crime Stoppers, Parents of Murdered Children. I can't tell you how much you've helped me just get through it initially, and then as he was convicted, a lot of times the parents that go to Parents of Murdered Children, once their trial is over, that they never come back, and maybe they don't want to for their own particular reasons. But what Parents of Murdered Children did for me for 20 years gave me a platform to vent and listen to people that have gone through the court system, maybe something that I could glean something from. I kind of feel it's my duty to continue going to these meetings, and if I could tell one person one thing that would help them, that's a success.
Well, you're the epitome of taking a negative and turning it into a positive.
Well,
and I mean, obviously we can't go back and change
we can't.
What happened to you or your family, but you make things better for others to come along.
Yeah.
And you've achieved a lasting legacy on it. So we have National Day of Remembrance that's coming up, and that was actually enacted by the U.S. Senate as a resolution in 2007. And this day is actually September 25th, but we try to do it on a weekend to make it accessible for families to attend. So the event this year will be September 22nd, which is a Sunday, from 6 to 8 p.m. at Crime Stoppers, our headquarters over here, which is at 3001 Main. And we're asking family members who do attend to please bring a picture of their loved ones. We're going to have the Houston Police Chief will be here, Harris County Sheriff will be here, constables will be here, district attorneys, victim advocates, law enforcement, criminal justice professionals, and sadly and unfortunately, but reality is, families that are walking in your shoes as well. So I think it's encumbersome that we all come together and try to make things better for everybody to come along. That's why we like to have these types of events, to let everybody know that there's a community out there that truly does care for them. So again, September 22nd, National Day of Remembrance, Sunday evening, 6 to 8 p.m. Come on, we got parking. Heck, I'll even throw in a bottle of water or two. And if David is really good, he might even bring his bobbleheads. Now, I'm not going to make him give out any of that stuff. But again, come on out, support us. Everyone's invited. All are invited to join us for this very special day.